They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, and pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with his story about 20 years before, and a younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. He started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and he had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as he filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. can see his wonders, signs and miracles of his love. We can return his love with devotion, standing on his word before all men. We are his beloved and his chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon his promises. Trust in God, believe upon his promises. Believe upon his promises.
All right. Welcome to True North Studio. I'm Mark Wallace, and today the title is A Healing Walk Through Jericho 2026. All right, well today we're going to take a healing walk through the ancient city of Jericho. Jesus and a huge group of family and friends had just finished day 3 of a 4-day hike from Galilee to Jerusalem. They were heading to Passover. Everyone, and I mean everyone from Galilee, made this 4-day pilgrimage 3 times a year to attend the required feast up in Jerusalem. They walked about 20 miles a day. Now, because of the size and the different ages of the group, they usually took the smoother path that runs along the eastern side of the Jordan River instead of the route that traverses the hill country of Samaria. All they had to do now was finish breakfast, pack up, and depending on how high the water was, wade across or pay the toll and get ferried across the Jordan. Then the ancient city of Jericho is only 5 miles away, and Jerusalem is 16 hard miles after that with a 3,300-foot elevation gain. Easy peasy. While waiting their turn to cross, the apostles were on edge. The disciples knew that not everyone on the trail, heck, not everyone traveling with Jesus fully believed in his cause. They also knew that some of their more disturbed religious leaders wanted him dead. This made them a little jumpy and over-vigilant. A few mothers from other family groups were already shoving their way through the crowd, wanting Jesus to bless their children. The apostles scolded the moms, telling them and their kids to back off. But the moms and kids kept coming. Just then, a rich young ruler, also not from their group, pushed his way through to ask Jesus a question that had been eating at him. What will it take for me to have eternal life? Well, Jesus, off the top of his head, told the wealthy young man to keep the 10 Commandments. The man told him that he had faithfully upheld them since he was a child. Then Jesus added, all you need to do now is give away the riches you hold so dear, trust God to supply your need, and follow me. Well, this is more about trust than money. Not willing to do that, the rich guy put his head down and disappeared back into the crowd. Luke 18:26, and they, the apostles that heard it, said, who then can be saved? 27, Jesus said, the things which are impossible with men are possible with God. Self-reliance is good, but God's supply is better. Peter then brings up what all the apostles were thinking. 28, then Peter said, lo, we've left all and followed thee. The apostles needed some reassurance. 29, and he, Jesus, said unto them, verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house or parents or brethren or wife or children for the kingdom of God's sake, who shall not receive manifold more, super abundantly more in this present time and in the world to come, life everlasting. Anyone who gives like you guys do will not only receive abundantly now, you'll be rewarded throughout eternity. Now we'll see a few great examples of incredible trust in this teaching. But for now, the apostles still had that deer in the headlights look. Jesus knew he needed to remind the apostles once again what was about to happen in a few days. They needed to keep their heads in the game. Things were about to get real. Luke 18:31, then he took unto him the 12 and said unto them, behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. For he, Jesus, shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, and spit upon, and they shall scourge him, and put him to death. Then Jesus pauses, smiles, locks eyes with Peter, raises 3 fingers in the air, and says his money line, and the 3rd day he shall rise again. Now smartly, Peter decides to keep his mouth shut this time, unlike up in Panea when he tried to muzzle Jesus from talking about his death and resurrection. Jesus knew with everything in him that he would rise from the dead 3 days after his death. After all, Jonah had prophesied about it some 300 years before. His apostles didn't have the same faith. Luke 18:34, and 1, they understood none of these things. 2, this saying was hid from them. 3, neither knew they the things which were spoken. God is telling us in 3 different ways that the apostles just couldn't wrap their heads around this Jesus dying and rising from the dead thing. After that little resurrection reminder, and before they made the 5-mile walk from the Jordan River up to Jericho, the crowd swelled on the west bank of the Jordan, waiting for everyone to finish crossing the river. Jericho is an interesting city. It's both very old and very new. All the travelers knew that King Herod had his winter home built there. They'll walk right past it on the upper west side. They also knew that this was the first city conquered by the Israelites when they entered their promised land, way back in Joshua's day. Today we know Jericho has been inhabited since deep into the Stone Age. The Encyclopedia Britannica says that Jericho dates back to 9000 BC. For you Bible timeline fans, that's 5,000 years before Adam and Eve. It's old. Jesus will once again take this city, not through battle, but through 5 miraculous healings. Now, let's rejoin Jesus' ever-growing group and enjoy their healing walk through Jericho. The first healing of the day. Jesus knew in his heart that all hell was about to break loose just a few days from now up in Jerusalem. But first they needed to work their way through Jericho. Jericho was a subtropical paradise. It was early spring and Jericho was already green and warm. Luke 18:35, and it came to pass that as he was coming nigh unto, or getting closer to Jericho, a certain blind man sat by the wayside begging. The word certain blind man simply means some random blind guy. This man was unknown to Jesus and the apostles. He wouldn't have been the only panhandler at such a congested spot. Feast traffic was money time, and today was payday. There were many beggars and many thieves on this steep road to Jerusalem, called the ascent of Adumim, meaning the ascent of Adam, because of its red dirt and rocks. 36, and hearing the multitude pass by Jesus and his group, he asked what it meant. The blind guy asked what it meant. The blind man asked, hey, you guys sound pretty excited. What's up? 37, and they told him that Jesus of Nazareth passes by. He thought, was this the same Jesus guy who had healed thousands? Holy moly! Verse 38, he cried, and that means he raised his voice a bit, saying, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Did you notice that he was not asking Jesus for money? He's asking Jesus for mercy. Now here's another important fact. Calling Jesus the son of David meant he believed Jesus was the Messiah, the chosen one, the Christ. Plus, contrary to social pressure, he just said it out loud. Out loud. There were vision problems 2,000 years ago, just like there are today. Today, the Vision Council tells us that approximately 86% of today's adults, 84% of today's adults use some form of vision correction, including eyeglasses, contact lenses, and/or surgery. Maybe even a few of us would have been considered blind people back then. I would have. Here's a sad fact about sight. In first century Israel, people believed that blindness was a result of some secret sin you or your parents committed. Deuteronomy 28:28. Some Israelites even believed that being disobedient to your parents could cause blindness. Proverbs 30:17. This broke number 4 of the 10 Commandments. I want you to know that I only disobeyed till I needed to wear glasses. That's a lifetime of guilt for a blind person to carry around. No wonder he asked for mercy. Now here's a seldom remembered tip on healing. Forgiveness and healing are inseparable. Inseparable. Now just watch how Peter and the boys deal with this blind guy who's asking Jesus for mercy. 39. And they which went before, that means walked at the front of the crowd, rebuked him that he should hold his peace. But he cried so much the more, "Thou son of David, have mercy on me!" A few of the disciples took it upon themselves to protect Jesus. They told this guy to pipe down, but the more they told him to shut up, the louder he got. People were watching. He started screaming so loud that his voice began to crack, "Son of David, have mercy on me!" When I was maybe 19, I drove across the country to hear a famous preacher teach a seminar on how to use the Spirit of God we've been given. I really wanted to meet him, so I tried to find him after the morning session. It was a nice day, and I noticed he had gone outside the auditorium to sit in a lawn chair under a shade tree. Now, there was a small crowd already around him. Well, I walked up to him with my hand out, ready to shake hands, and 2 huge goons ran at me like linebackers and basically tackled me. They grabbed me by the shoulders and manhandled me off the campus. They literally shoved me into the city street like I was an assassin. With spittle flying, they told me in no uncertain terms, "Don't come back. You're not welcome here." All I wanted to do was meet the teacher. But in that I'm kind of blind to ego-driven authority, I walked right back on campus, attended the next session, and met the man later. Jesus' self-appointed security detail demanded that the blind guy shut up. He's attracting all kinds of attention, and attention attracts the Romans and the religious leaders. Luke 18:40, and Jesus stood, that means stood still, and commanded him to be brought unto him. And when he was come near, he asked him, saying, "What wilt thou that I shall do unto thee?" And he said, "Lord, that I might receive my sight." 42, and Jesus said unto him, "Receive thy sight. Thy faith hath saved thee. Sozo made you whole." And immediately he received his sight and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise unto God. Do you think the guy was blessed? The entire crowd was blown away to see this healing, and they hadn't even entered Jericho yet. Here's a tip for you divine healing fans. During this particular healing, Jesus never touched him or prayed for him. Jesus simply said, "Your faith has healed you." When ministering healing, only do what God tells you to do. Let me tell you a little story about helping others develop this thing called faith. In the 1930s, the best hitting baseball team in the Texas League was from San Antonio. The problem was they were on a losing streak. They couldn't buy a hit. The players were blaming everyone and everything but themselves. The dugout was super negative. During an away game in Dallas, Coach O'Reilly got an idea. At that time, there was a faith healer in Dallas named Slater, who had gained the reputation as a miracle worker. All the boys had heard of him. An hour before the game, Coach O'Reilly burst into the clubhouse and told every player to hand over their 2 best bats, saying that he had an idea that would help them win the pennant. Coach put their bats in a wheelbarrow and rolled them out of the locker room, tossed them in the bed of his truck, and was gone. 5 minutes before the game, Coach O'Reilly reappeared with the bats. He told the team that he had been to see Mr. Slater, who had not only blessed the bats, but he had prayed over them that they would all produce hits. The previous day, the entire team only got 1 hit in the entire game. But today, when they used the blessed bats, they got 37 hits, scored 22 runs, including 11 home runs. Not only did they win the game, but they went on to win the pennant with those same bats. Funny thing, nobody knows if Coach O'Reilly even took those bats to Mr. Slater or not. The fact is, it really doesn't matter. The team believed the wooden bats were blessed and would produce hits, and hits were produced. The real faith healing happened in the players' minds. Coach O'Reilly found a way to get their heads back up to the championship level. All they needed to do was believe. That's faith. The unknown blind guy sitting beside the road believed that if he could just get the attention of the Christ, he would be forgiven and healed. That's some big believing. What you believe with every fiber of your being is faith. The unnamed blind guy at the eastern gate of Jericho was healed. The crowd grew. That was healing number 1. The second healing of the day. Now the Gospel of Mark picks up where Luke left off. This is minutes after the first healing. After they heard what happened, the excited crowd exploded through town. Local children were skipping and doing cartwheels. Moms were taking off their aprons and walking outside with hands on hips to see what all the fuss was about. Jesus' group is kind of loud. Then the townspeople see something else. They point their fingers and say, "Isn't that the blind guy from the east side of town? What's going on here? Can he see now? This doesn't make any sense." Mark 10:46, and they came into Jericho. And as he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great number of people. Now notice they went into and out of Jericho. After the first healing, the now animated crowd went in through the eastern gate, bought a few supplies, loaded up on water, walked completely through the city of Jericho, and surged out the west side gate. Watch this. Now the man who just got healed gets to see for the first time this time another blind guy begging. He saw, verse 46, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the highway side, the main road, begging. Now this blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was a well-known and well-liked west side panhandler. His spot was on the far west side of the city, just outside the gate. Now, do you ever see the same homeless people sitting at the same spots in your city? Josephine always keeps a bottle of water with $5 wrapped around it in the cup holder of her car. And she has it ready so that she can give it quickly to the one old homeless man named Will, who sits near a stoplight just as she exits her favorite grocery store. She looks forward to seeing him. He always looks her in the eye, shares a little more about his life until the light changes, then says thanks and God bless you. And if he's not there, she misses him. Now, Josephine and Will are on a first name basis. She just found out he's from Lorain, Ohio, near where we used to live. I saw a lady giving him a greeting card with some money in it the other day. Will is well known. The fact that Bartimaeus is named meant Jesus knew him. Now, depending on his age, Bart may have occupied that same spot Jesus' entire life. Now remember, Jesus could have passed this way 3 times a year with his family and friends every year of his life. Actually, 6 times a year if Jesus' family went back by the same route. Jesus may have seen Bartimaeus over 100 times throughout his life. Bartimaeus owned this west side begging spot. The growing crowd bursts out of the western gate of Jericho ahead of Jesus. Everyone lets the beggars on the west side of the city know what just happened on the east side. The news about the blind guy from the east side being healed was spreading like wildfire. Everyone was talking about it. 47, and when he, blind Bartimaeus, heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, the Son of David, have mercy on me." Blind Bartimaeus didn't start off with a simple, "What's up?" like the first guy. He immediately broke into a full-blown voice-cracking scream. Why? Because that's probably what the first blind guy said he did to get Jesus' attention and get healed. What would you have done? Bart repeated the exact same words as the first guy. The apostles were on high alert now, and many charged him that he should hold his peace, but he cried the more a great deal, "Thou son of David, have mercy on me!" Once again, the cautious, unfiltered disciples told the second screaming blind guy to shut the blank up. Then many others in the crowd joined in on shushing Bartimaeus. And like the first blind guy, he just got louder. Bart went into verbal overdrive. Now here's a fun faith fact. Jesus had undoubtedly spoken with Bartimaeus before, but had never healed him. Why was this time different? Could the other blind guy getting healed by Jesus have added to Bart's faith? His believing expectation? Probably. The word cried the more means he screamed so loud that his voice sounded like a croaking raven. "Son of David, have mercy on me!" He was screaming as loud as he could possibly yell. Have you ever had a homeless guy scream at you in full voice? I have. When I was a young newlywed, I was helping a friend deliver a new oven to a bakery in a very seedy part of Manhattan. I held one side of the oven and he held the other. We passed a group of old homeless guys sitting side by side along one wall of the building, empty liquor bottles beside them. I gave eye contact and a smile to one man, and the bald guy started yelling at me. He screamed so loud his veins popped out of his neck and his face turned red. He screamed, "When you were a baby sucking on rags, I was fighting for this country." Now he wasn't asking me for drink money or healing. The old veteran just felt like screaming at me. Bartimaeus was asking for something. 49, and Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. And they called the blind man, saying unto him, "Be of good comfort, rise, he calleth thee." Again, you've got to know this was not the only beggar at the western gate of the city, but he was by far the loudest. Even the deaf guys were holding their ears. What would you have done to get Jesus' attention if you wanted to get healed? Like the first blind guy, because of what he had heard over the past year, old Bart believed Jesus, the kid from Nazareth, was the Messiah. Watch this. 50. And he, casting away his garment, rose and came to Jesus. Now this is a big clue as to where Bart's head was at, where his faith was at, where his believing was at. This outer garment was their coat, their bed, their pillow, their shelter, and their begging mat. Like an open guitar case, the beggars also used their cloak to catch coins. For a blind man to toss aside his outer garment, his coin-catching mat, which probably had money in it, showed that he believed that this was his time to get healed. He was all in. 51, and Jesus answered and said unto him, "What wilt thou that I should do unto thee?" And the blind man said unto him, "Lord, that I might receive my sight." And Jesus said unto him, "Go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole." And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus in the way. Wow! After this instant healing, Bart joined Jesus' growing crowd. Now, did you notice that once again, Jesus never touched his eyes, never prayed to God, never breathed on him, never spit on the ground and rubbed dirt in the guy's eye, never took him aside for a solemn hand-laying healing service? Jesus simply said, "Your faith hath made you whole." The man totally believed Jesus. He totally believed Jesus. Again, what is faith? When I was 17 and a brand new Christian, I went on a multi-day canoe trip down the Brazos River in Texas with a Christian kid from India named Sunil. It was a slow-moving redwater river with plenty of places to camp. In our faded red aluminum canoe, my paddling partner and I rounded a bend and saw a tanned little blonde boy playing alone near the water. His parents were maybe 30 yards inland, near their tent under a shade tree. Now in Texas, there are a lot of things that can hurt you in the bush. Rattlers, scorpions, fire ants, and more types of sticker bushes than you care to count, especially near the water. Well, just as we got close, as if on cue, the kid fell into a thorn bush and got stuck. He was struggling and screaming like a wet cat. We paddled in, and I hopped out of the canoe and gently pulled the kid free, thorn by thorn. Pick, 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 pick. And he had little bloody spots all over his body. And I carried him up to his mom, who calmly walked him into the tent as he screamed like the dickens. Now, to my surprise, once in the tent, the crying stopped instantly. The boy bolted out of the tent, ran up to me sporting a fancy blue Band-Aid on his knee. And in his little Texas accent, he said, "If we put blue Band-Aids all over our body, we feel good all the time." That's faith. That's faith. Faith is a knowing expectation. Faith is going full on. Faith is being in the zone. Faith leaves no room for doubt. Faith is fearless. Faith is those blessed baseball bats. Faith is that blue Band-Aid. Now a second blind guy, someone Jesus knew, was healed that morning. The crowd grew even bigger, and the apostles were beginning to lose their minds. That was healing number 2. Now the third and fourth healings of the day. It has been quite a morning so far. It seems like 2 blind men getting healed on the same day at opposite ends of town would be enough, but Jesus was just warming up. I wonder how Jesus kept his head together knowing he would be killed soon after he got to Jerusalem. What did he do with his mind? Well, he just kept giving. Now we switch to the Gospel of Matthew for yet another camera angle. Watch this. Matthew 20:29. And as they departed from Jericho, a great multitude followed him. The crowd grew even bigger. Now they were all surging uphill away from the western gate of Jericho and were heading up into the new suburbs, still on their way to the Passover feast in Jerusalem, now only 15 miles to go. Well, this side of Jericho was where the rich Romans and wealthy Judeans built their second and third homes. Remember, even King Herod had his winter home here. Hundreds of people and 2 recently healed blind men are walking with Jesus and the boys uphill toward Jerusalem. The apostles have still been frantically trying to crowd control the mob because Jesus is precious cargo. 30, and behold, 2 blind men sitting by the wayside, when they heard that Jesus passed by, cried out, that means screamed like the dickens, saying, "Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou son of David!" Did you notice that these 2 blind men were not begging like the other 2? They didn't need to. After all, they were from the wealthy Upper West Side. They were only sitting there to catch up on the internet traffic of the day, which was traveler gossip. Now I ask you, why is it that all 4 blind men said the same thing as the first guy at the same volume? Why? Don't you think the 2 recently healed blind guys might have run ahead of the crowd and told all the other blind guys how they got healed? Sure. Wouldn't you have done the same thing? Now these 2 blind buddies started screaming at Jesus, 31, and the multitude rebuked them because they should hold their peace. Well, these 2 men were so loud that the entire miracle mob, shouted at them in unison to, "Shut up!" Imagine everybody in that humongous crowd scolding you to pipe down. Jesus' childhood neighbors from Galilee yelled. All the apostles yelled. The apostles' parents yelled. Even Jesus' mom and brothers yelled. Jesus' little sister told the 2 guys to zip it. The men kept screaming because that's what the other 2 guys told them to do. The belief in Jesus being the Messiah separated these 2 men from the dozens and dozens of other panhandlers who couldn't see past their begging cups. These 2 men fully believed that God would supply. 31 continued, but they cried the more. They screamed even louder. saying, "Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David." These poor little rich kids didn't want money from Jesus. They needed mercy. They wanted forgiveness. They wanted healing. Healing tip. Our mental state, our current attitude, even community believing has more to do with healing than we think. On the other hand, if you've been taught your entire life that it was sin that kept you sick or blind, wouldn't that get into your head? Careful what you tell your children or yourself. 32. And Jesus stood still and called them and said, "What will ye that I shall do unto you?" 3. 33. They say unto him, "Lord, that our eyes may be opened." Jesus kind of figured that. 34. So Jesus had compassion on them, meaning he ached for them. He ached for them, and he touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. This is the first time that day that Jesus touched the people he intended to heal. Plus, there's no mention here of their faith making them whole. He didn't need to say it. He didn't need to say it. Josephine, our young son Adam, and I had been out of state at a Bible college. We came back to New Jersey to visit Josephine's family for Christmas. We were invited to a party to reconnect with the local believers. Well, a woman with thick, dark, curly hair and pronounced Mediterranean features, a girl I sort of knew, walked up to me and gave me a smile and a side hug, and I side hugged her back, spoke with her for a few minutes, patted her on the back, and she was gone. She waded back into the festive crowd. 2 years later, she sought me out at another Christmas party and thanked me for healing her. And I said, "I don't remember praying for you." She said, "You didn't pray for me." Now, I was a bit confused now. And she told me that before that party 2 years ago, she had been diagnosed with a cancerous lump on her spine. And she told God that day, "God, I'm going to be healed at this party today, but I'm not going to ask anyone to pray for me." She said that when I placed my hand on her back and hugged her, the tumor got hot like a coal and then just disappeared. Poof. I had no idea. She then told me that her oncologist said it was totally gone, no evidence that a tumor had ever been there. 2 years later, she was still cancer-free. I was the one that touched her that day, but she was the one who believed. That's faith. Now, we don't know what our words, our smiles, our touch can do for somebody. You don't know how much that post or book or call or handwritten note or song you wrote can do for people. You've touched more lives than you realize. You've brought healing to many and didn't even know it. We are ambassadors for Christ. We have the Spirit of God. Like Jesus, we too are sent to speak the word, to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance, and to heal the sick, Luke 4. And why not? We have Christ in us. 2 blind guys from the Upper West Side got healed. That makes 4 blind guys healed within a very short amount of time. The crowd was so blessed they were losing their minds. But the tide of believing can quickly change. 4 healings so far today, and it isn't even lunchtime. The final healing of the day. There was one more healing that would happen on this day, but it was a different kind of blindness. Now the massive group surges into the even more elite Upper West Side neighborhood of Jericho. Jesus was still aware that every step they took was a step closer to his torture and death. His apostles were still on high alert. But somehow Jesus stayed focused on the now. Another great lesson in healing. Luke picks the story back up. Luke 19:1, and Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Entered and passed through Jericho. It had been quite a healing walk so far. The air is electric. The crowd is eclectic. The mood is kinetic. The animated crowd walking with Jesus has now grown exponentially. It was also becoming dangerous. 2. And behold, surprise, there was a man named Zacchaeus, which was the chief among the publicans, and he was rich. Zacchaeus surprised the crowd by even allowing himself to be seen. he was kind of infamous. A publican, was an intensely hated Jew because he worked for the hated Romans. These publicans would rip off their own people, collect more taxes than they should have, and pocket the rest. Think mafia. It was a scam, a con, a shakedown that the Romans allowed. As long as Rome got their cut of tax money, the more taxes the publicans collected, the more they kept for themselves. Now here's an interesting thought. The Apostle Matthew, once a tax collector himself, must have at one time worked under this guy. Now I know this because Zacchaeus was the chief, the top dog, the head of the tax collectors for Herod. I'll give him a mafia street name, Little Zach, or Lil Zach. And he sought to see Jesus, who he was, and could not for the press, because he was little of stature. The word press can be translated crowd crush. This is the type of crowd that people warn you against at concerts or large sporting events. Zach knew better than to get swept up into that human stampede. He also knew the people hated him. 4. And he ran before and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. Zach ran as fast as his little legs would carry him and climbed up into one of the thick, low-hanging branches of a sycamore fig tree, careful not to scuff his brand new alligator sandals. Now he could at least see this Jesus guy he's heard so much about. 5. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said unto him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. 6. And he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. Everybody knew who the crooked little mafia don was, even Jesus. And Zach was excited to meet the Messiah. Josephine and I were having dinner at a restaurant in the small Italian section of Cleveland. And I'm not sure if we were with Dan and Mary or not. And most of the people who ate there were locals, and most were Italian. And we were sitting there enjoying our delicious antipasta when suddenly everyone in the restaurant stood up and started clapping. And I thought, what the? A well-dressed white-haired man in a nice gray suit entered, smiled, and gave the please sit down wave. And everyone sat back down and went back to eating. Fully confused, I asked the guy at the next table, who the heck is that guy? And the guy paused, looked both ways, and whispered in a conspiratorial voice, he's the head mafia guy in Cleveland. Everybody knows that. Everyone knew Zacchaeus. Jesus called out Zacchaeus by name and invited himself and his inner circle of disciples to brunch at Zach's mansion. No one in the crowd liked that idea. Nobody. 7. And when Jesus' huge crowd, saw it, that Jesus was going to dine with little Zach, that means everyone, murmured. That means complained out loud, saying that Jesus, was gone to be guest with the man that's a sinner. Or back to that sin thing. Oh, how quickly this tide of emotions can turn. Notice the once happy crowd is turning on Jesus. Even the apostles, disciples, and Jesus' family all murmured against Jesus. All the people in Jesus' crowd hated little Zach with a white-hot passion. Yep, even Jesus' family was in that crowd. Little Zach was considered evil, the devil, Hitler, Bernie Madoff, and Balaam all rolled into one. Zach was tainted, dirty, low down, and crooked. I love how it says that they all complained. They all murmured. They couldn't help it. They all hated tax collectors, especially this guy. Now I better watch what I'm saying because I have an IRS agent who lives next door to me. How would you feel if you were in this crowd with Jesus? How would you feel if the man Jesus called over was that politician you hate the most? The one you feel like spitting at every time you see his or her ugly face on TV. That's how the crowd felt looking at Zacchaeus. Just looking at him made them sick. Jesus saw something different though. Well, Jesus with his reluctant apostles, all walked uphill to Zacchaeus' mansion for a meal. It was not quite as lavish as the king's winter home, but it was comfortable. Servants prepared a small feast while Jesus and Zacchaeus talked. The rest of the crowd, now super disappointed with Jesus, storms uphill toward Jerusalem. One of Jesus' apostles, Simon the Zealot, the apostle who wanted all Roman sympathizers dead, would have been seething with barely contained fury. Matthew, the reformed tax collector himself, sitting right next to Simon, squirmed in his seat, trying to avoid any and all eye contact with his old mob boss. But some unspoken thing changed in Zacchaeus during that meal with Jesus. He felt clean and unburdened. He experienced a lightness of being like he hadn't felt since childhood. Zach stood up as tall and proud as he could stand to make a special announcement. His pretty young wife cringed. And Zacchaeus stood and said unto the Lord, "Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I will give to the poor." Zacchaeus, like someone given a toast at a wedding, stands up, thrusts his drink in the air, and announces he's going to give away half his money. His wife drops a dish. Verse 8 continued, "And from now on, if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, by extortion, I will restore him fourfold." The words taken by false accusation are pretty telling. In the Greek, it means to squeeze money out of people by defaming them. Today we call it extortion, blackmail, and racketeering. For you young people, Zach used social bullying for financial gain. But no more would he use political blackmail to shake down the Judeans for money, using Roman soldiers as his muscle. Like those 4 healed blind guys, something changed in Zacchaeus that day. Something finally came together in his dark little heart. Some unspoken spiritual deliverance just happened. Even his tall trophy wife felt something clean and refreshing about this Jesus fella. He promised Jesus that from now on, he was going to live differently. "I'm going to give half my stuff to the poor, and if I ever slander anyone out of money again, from now on I will pay them back 4 times the amount." Remember way back earlier in the day when Jesus gave the wealthy young man a path to eternal life? He told him to get rid of everything he didn't need and to follow him. But the young man wasn't willing to do it. Luke 18. Zacchaeus is willing to do it. Zacchaeus is willing to do it. Luke 19:9, "And he, Jesus, said unto him, this day is salvation come to this house." That's Zach's family. In this instance, the word salvation is soteria, means to be rescued and delivered. Jesus just dove into the spiritually deep water and rescued Zach and his family from the judgment of the unjust. For as much as he also is a son of Abraham, that means Zach is now a true believer. Verse 10, "For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which is lost." Jesus told Zacchaeus, "Today you and your family have been rescued and delivered. Today a great spiritual healing took place. You will have eternal life. This is my purpose in life." Zacchaeus and his family were healing number 5. This healing was both spiritual and eternal. Now in closing, what a walk through Jericho. What healings. What a Savior. Even knowing that soon after he got to Jerusalem he would be killed, Jesus was still on the give. He stayed true to his purpose. He stayed focused. That's a big lesson in healing for us too, to fully live out our gift and to never stop doing good. First, the unnamed blind guy at the eastern riverside gate of Jericho got healed, Luke 18. Next, blind Bartimaeus sitting at the western entrance of Jericho got healed, Mark 10. Then 2 blind men from the wealthy families in the upper west side suburbs got healed, Matthew 20. Finally, super rich Zacchaeus, the little mafia don, was healed from his spiritual blindness, Luke 19. 5 men were healed that day. All of them wanted it. All of them believed Jesus was the one who could cure them, rescue them, deliver them. The only ones who didn't fully get it that day were the apostles. But we'll cover that in detail on Resurrection Sunday. We too have been rescued and saved by the Christ, and we each have been given a job, a calling, a specific task to perform. There are people out there that will only respond to you. There's people that will only respond to you. The lump is gone. The baseball bats have been blessed. The blue Band-Aids have been applied. It's our turn to use our gifts, and rescue people. Sometimes it's just a touch, a word, a smile. There are still people in this world that need what only you have to give. Now is the time to give the best of ourselves to others. Now is the time to cure spiritual blindness with your clear message of truth. Now is our time to shine, to love, to heal, to bless. You may have aged since you first got born again. You may be busy. You may have a few physical limitations now, but for God's sake, find a way to spread your light, share the love, and speak the truth. Sing your song, write your book, speak the word. Somehow get out there and give the very best of yourselves. It's time for us to take a healing walk through the crowded streets of our own Jericho. God bless.